All right, welcome everyone. This is our first ever Legal Innovation Spotlight Live, and I'm your host, Ted Theodoropoulos. And with me today, I have the wonderful Amy Monahan. Say hi, Amy.
Hello.
Amy is InfoDash's Director of Innovation, Product Innovation, and Customer Success. And today we are talking to the wonderful Joy Heath Rush about ILTACON 2024. Welcome, Joy.
Thank you. It's great to be here and always with friends. It's even better to do it with friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we do a weekly podcast that has a little bit of a longer format. We try and do 45, 50 minutes. Today, we're going to try and talk for about 30 minutes, and we have some information to share with you about what to expect at ILTACON this year. And please put questions that you have in the chat. We're going to queue most of those up for the back 15 minutes on the agenda. But if there's something relevant to the topic that we're talking about, Amy's going to chime in and we'll try and ask that as we go. So this was a very pleasant surprise for me seeing that ILTACON this year was going to be in Nashville. Nashville happens to be my favorite venue. I think I've been to almost all of them, and I really liked Nashville the best. No venue is perfect. Every venue has kind of pros and cons, but getting out to Broadway was so much fun when we did it 10 years ago, which that is right, Joy, right? That was 2014, I think, last
Yeah,
time.
and we were supposed to be there in 2020, but it seems like this thing happened globally. I'm not sure I can remember it at this point, but it definitely changed our plans for 2020, but it's also one of the reasons we'll be there for 2 years in a row. So this year we're in Opryland. Next year we're at National Harbor outside Washington, D.C., my hometown. And then we'll be 2 straight years in Opryland. So the 2026 was planned. 2027 is the makeup year for 2020.
Gotcha. And I did 10 years is a long time. Like there are going to be a lot of people who've never been to Nashville
That's right.
ILTACON before. So I did a post earlier this week, which I thought was pretty interesting, but is instructive here to demonstrate just how much has changed in 10 years. So 10 years ago, there were only 16 people in ILTA who had the title innovation, had the word innovation in their title. Today, there's 300. There were 10 firms in 2014. Today, there's 135 firms with innovation teams. So that's just one little small sliver of all the change that's taken place. But it's great to see the conference go back to Nashville. And if memory serves, it is on an island a little bit. So you've got kind of the Grand Ole
Definitely.
Opry,
Yep.
yeah, right next door. But there's not a lot in the immediate vicinity. Like, for example, at National Harbor, you walk right outside the hotel and you've got all these restaurants and bars and Airbnbs. And it's a little different in Nashville,
It
correct?
definitely is, yeah. And Gaylord has kind of two models. One of them is this great big huge facility, usually fairly close to the airport, which this is, but kind of isolated from everything else. And then the other model is the National Harbor model, which is Gaylord is the flagship property, and they've essentially built a community around it. That's happening right now, actually, at the Gaylord Rockies in Denver.
Mm.
It's been open for, I think, 5 years now, but it's building up in the National Harbor model. So actually, we're going to be taking a look at it in the fall it's going to be several years before it's ready for us. But yeah, and so like hotel wise, there's the Inn at Opryland, which is about half a mile. I think it's a Great Wolf Lodge. You'd think I would know that, but there's a water park hotel about a mile down the way, which a lot of our people who bring their families stay there so that their kids can water park during the day. But no, there's not a lot around. It's not like being able to go out, walk 5 minutes and be to a dueling piano bar like you have at National Harbor.
Yeah.
That's one of the big differences.
One of the things that I liked about the Nashville venue was the vendor parties like down on Broadway. Like I can't remember now who it was that like rented out all of Tootsie's, and we had the entire roof deck patio area
Mhm.
up there, and it was so much fun. But you literally got to get on a bus, right?
That's
Is
right.
that kind of the MO? Is you're gonna
Yes.
have shuttles?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And those will primarily be provided by the business partners that are hosting events downtown. We have quite a few business partners who are hosting events at the hotel. There are a number of nice restaurants and gathering areas in the hotel, so they're hosting things there. And usually there's one business partner in particular who has a legendary party on Wednesday night, and I won't reveal that. I'll leave that up to them, but they always have a really good party. And although I will say that um, there's a lot of interest this year. Many of you saw the um, publicity after Legal Week about some unfortunate events that happened in and around Legal Week and at other, gatherings. And so there's a little bit of extra emphasis, I think, for all event operators on safety, and making sure that we're giving people, options that don't involve alcohol, that we're giving people a good way to call for help. And I'm not trying to put a negative pal on anything. Actually, we've been offering very, very safe events for over 40 years, but you can always do better. Um, and I think a lot of our business partners are taking that to heart too, and in how they're structuring their social activities. There'll be plenty of them, plenty of social activities, but there will be more, for example, non-alcohol options. I think those kinds of things.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate whenever you've got a big group of people and alcohol involved.
It's human beings. I mean, if human beings are together, there's lots of good things that happen all the time, and occasionally some not so good things. But um, we all work together to make it better. And as I said, I'm very proud of everything we've been able to do at ILTACON. It's just you'll probably see a little bit for those attending. You'll probably see a little bit more awareness generally in the community about those kinds of issues than you've seen in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's a bad thing. I've been a witness to some of the bad behavior, and it's unpleasant. So I'm glad you guys are putting an emphasis on that.
Yeah.
So, Amy, I think you had some questions about Startup Hub you wanted to ask.
Yeah, well, actually, I want to talk about future locations first and then
Mm.
Startup Hub. So this actually is going to be my first time going to ILTACON in Nashville. So I didn't start going to ILTACON until 2015, I believe. So I'm looking forward to it. I've been to Nashville many times, but not for ILTACON. So very much looking forward to it. But you mentioned maybe the Denver area in the future. What are some other future potential locations?
Well, we're booked through 31.
Okay.
So after we finish at Opryland in 27, then, and of course, sometimes your brain goes. So in 28 and 30, we'll be in either Marriott or National Harbor, and 29 and 31, it's either Marriott World in Orlando or National Harbor. I just don't remember off the top of my head which is which.
Yep.
But Marriott World is a new property for us, and we're really excited about it. We've been trying to get in there for a long time. Our members love Orlando. They love going to Orlando. And we had a great experience at the Swan and Dolphin and Yacht and Beach Club, but that campus model is tough.
Yes.
For my team, it was like running 3 conferences instead of 1.
Yes.
It's the conference in one building, the conference in the other building, and then the things you had to do to get from one place to another.
Yeah.
Marriott World is Marriott's flagship convention property. 95% of their business is conferences and conventions. That's where they send their up and coming banquet managers and et cetera to be trained. And we've been trying to get there for a long time. So we're really excited to be at Marriott World. As I said, we're going to be looking at Gaylord Rockies. We're also going to be looking at, and some of you, I bet Ted remembers this, remembers the Gaylord Texan in Dallas, which when we were there in 2008 or 8, I think it was, the entire Texan would fit inside the atrium at Opryland. That was the difference in size of the hotel. But they've they're growing that property, so we're going to go look at it and see what their plans are for the future. So that we're looking at those. We always have the option to going to Las Vegas. Frankly, our members don't like it all that much. They're not crazy
No.
about going to Vegas. So.
Yeah, I'm with the majority there. I am not a fan of Vegas.
No,
Yeah.
it's ILTACON. Like, I need to go after an ILTACON, not in Vegas. I need to go into a cold, dark room for a couple of days and not be talked to. And you throw Vegas on top of that, and I look like I got hit in the face with a shovel when I leave there. So.
Oh yeah, and I think the thing that our members and business partners both dislike the most. I mean, the hospitality at Mandalay Bay has been very good to us. For example, I have nothing but nice things to say about them. But you're never going to get a run of the property contract in Vegas. You're just not going to, because of the casinos and the shows and all the other things that are happening. And our members like knowing that essentially everyone they run into at Opryland that week is going to be an Hilton, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have run of the property, and they like that. It really helps improve the networking. We experimented a few years ago with a convention center type setup, which is where there are multiple hotels that feed into a single convention center. With one of our smaller events, we had our legal security event in San Antonio at the convention center there. I mean, certainly it's workable. Lots of organizations do it. It has not been traditionally the favorite format for our members.
Yeah. So ILTACON has grown a lot, which is great.
Yes.
And one of the newer additions to it is the Startup Hub. So I wanted to chat with you and get your thoughts on this year's Startup Hub, because it sounds like it's going to be huge, like the biggest yet.
It is. And we had close to 60 applications for the Startup Hub. We originally had 20 slots, and we were able to squeak out a few more. Our final number, I believe, is 27. But it'll be right around there. It's either 26 or 27. And we also did something different this year, because we had started to see last year the number of applications ramping up. So we decided that we should hear from the attendees about which startups they want to see. Mm-hmm. So this year we had a committee of CIOs and one outside tax consultant who, with me, went through all of the applications and rated them to make sure that the ones that are in the exhibit hall, that it's not just first come, first serve. There are a lot of people that submitted during the window, but that we were showing those who had the most interesting, compelling, perhaps disruptive, unique offerings. And I think you're going to really love some of the things you're seeing.
Yeah. Do you know offhand how many of them are AI startups, AI focused?
All of them? No, no, not all of them. Probably 2/3. At least that's a significant portion. But one of the things we have this year, it's a little bit new, is we've also included service providers. Mm-hmm. It's not just products. So we have some new service provider companies that are fitting in important niches, like helping manage AI projects and data cleanup and all those kinds of things, that will also be making an appearance. And I think that's great.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you had some CIOs from the G100 help make the selection. What were some of the criteria that they were looking for?
It's interesting. They asked me that too. And what I said to them is, I want you to say, gosh, I would go visit these people. Mm-hmm. I would want to talk to them. I wasn't asking for any more than that, because my team actually had weeded out. I mean, a couple of companies applied that weren't truly startups. Mm. It's like one company was founded in 2002. I don't see them as a startup. And it doesn't mean you have to have founded this year, but you need to be newish, certainly in the last couple of years. So we weeded those out. But I really said, I want your things you would like to see, people that you would stop and talk to. And that was kind of the way we approached it. And actually not giving them such specific criteria, I think worked really well. And what was so funny is how aligned they were, surprisingly so. I mean, there were a handful of outliers, but by and large, and they did not talk to each other. They each independently reviewed the applications, and then I collated all of the ratings and responses, but it was remarkably aligned. I think probably the one big difference is I looked much more so than they did at kind of the pedigree of the company.
Okay.
Like, uh, not in terms of, financing or anything, but was a founder someone with a history in the industry of success or of delivering products that were very popular, those kinds of things. Um, and again, I'm not saying bad or good. That was just one of the things I looked at in addition to, because they were looking at it much more from the standpoint of the buyer. And I
Right.
was looking at it more from the standpoint of um, what would what people would kinds of things people would want to see and people they would want to speak with.
Right. More of a community perspective.
Correct.
Yeah. And this year, are you still going to have the presentation stage for the startups?
They are. I believe that's on Wednesday, Amy, and we'll be having the presentations go all day. My team's working with them right now on the slots. And we're continually trying to improve that to give them the best stage we can, and also we also want to bring people into the exhibit hall to visit Info Dash and all of our other established business partners who are exhibiting.
Yeah, and we were participants in the Startup Hub. I think it was the first year. Was that National Harbor 2 years
It
ago?
was
Was that?
the very first year was 18.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Um,
we came
but
later.
it didn't. It was very small, and we didn't really have the concept perfect.
Mm,
So I think when we started doing it, what I consider to be the right way, yes, would have been 22. Yep.
yeah. Yeah, we had a great experience. We had been around. We were AcroWire
Hmm.
consulting company. We'd started in '08 and fell down the legal rabbit hole very early on. And so we were. It was several of my co-founders were former AcroWire, but we were a new
Hmm.
organization, so we kind of reset and pivoted, and we had a really good experience with it. I mean, when you're first starting out, budget is a challenge, and
Yes.
you guys help with that. How is what you're doing there with startups different than? I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your take on this. How is what you're doing with startups different than TLTF?
Well, I think TLTF is very focused on what I call the matchmaking component,
Hmm.
and that's great. I mean, it's really designed as a place to bring investors and new tech together. And I love working with Zach. He's great, and he loves coming to ILTACON, and I appreciate everything he does to support us. But I think the idea, and I'm not sure clearly what their process is for selecting, but I know that it's kind of mirroring targets and people that are looking to invest. For us, it's much more about again disruption or filling a gap. Um, for example, there's one product, and I won't name it, but it's a product in an established space that I thought was kind of closed. And then I read their application. I was like, wow, this is a really different approach to this problem. And even though there are established players in this area, this is something that's worth seeing. And actually, the CIOs had the same comment about it. We all
Mm,
kind of saw that in the same way. Or something it's like, oh, really? There's not really a product that's like there's one product for capacity planning. And a lot of very large law firms during the pandemic, particularly, built a
mhm.
capacity planning. That's not something everyone can do, right? So it brings capacity planning to a bigger audience. So those were some of the kinds of things we were looking at.
Interesting. So, and then going forward, like, what is the future vision for the Startup Hub? I mean, it's such an exciting time. Like when you guys started in 18 or 19, AI really wasn't on the radar, and there wasn't such all this excitement and capital flowing into the space as there is today. Like, where do you see this going in the next couple of years?
Well, I have a little advisory committee that I work with on this to make sure we're meeting the needs of startups. And actually, about this time last year, I think it was Kristen Sondai, had made an interesting post on LinkedIn about the community needing to do more for startups. So I reached
Mhm.
out to her and I'm like, tell me what else we should be doing. Here's some of the things we are doing. And so this committee, kind of advises me on some of the thoughts. One of the things we're looking at is I call it a graduation program. Internally, my team calls it a step up program
Mm.
to give startups kind of a year two of not the very, very reduced pricing like they get in year one, but kind of the next step up um, to give them a couple of years to ramp up into the industry. We're looking at ways that we can help them tell their stories. We do, one of the things that Ted, I know you've seen this firsthand, but for those in the business partner community who are listening, may not know. I mean, we have a lot of really skilled marketers in our group. Dawn, who runs ILTACON, basically at the top of my organization, was the head of marketing for a legal software company for a while. So we're always happy to sit down with you and say, here's how you can make the best of your ILTA experience. What are the kinds of things you want to do? Let us help you get your message out. And so it's trying to do those kinds of things too. For our startups this year, we've arranged a meeting with someone who I refer to as a serial entrepreneur. Um, he's always starting new companies or going in to head up new companies and turning them and moving on. And he's offering time to meet with these startups and answering some of their questions about what to do depending on what they want their next step to be. This is not always the same. Um, we also have the folks from Legal Tech Hub um, have volunteered to spend some time with our startups talking about how people look at the listings, what kinds of things people are looking at, and so forth. And so we're trying to bring more resources to bear and give them more exposure.
I love that. I mean, I think, you could even potentially, I don't know if this is on your radar, but have some mentoring. I've done some kind of informal mentoring, like a marketing company that we used to use. They're kind of like fractional CMO. They do that kind of work, and they had a startup that was new to ILTACON last year, and my counterpart over there asked, "Hey, would you mind talking to so and so?" And I said, "No, I was sure." And after however many years of this, I've got a playbook, and was able to impart some, I think, good advice. So yeah, that's I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that you guys are thinking in that direction.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it's really important, and it's it's funny because in talking again to our established business partner community, and Ted, you're part of our business partner committee or advisory committee, so you know how these conversations take place. I'll go to them and say, "How do you feel about this? Is this something you're interested in? Would you want to do it?" And for example, when we first brought the startup hub or grew it, in 2022, I asked our established business partners, "Are you okay with this?" And I can remember one person in particular saying, "Are you kidding? It brings people into the exhibit hall."
yeah.
They're not viewing it as, "Oh, you're helping our competitors or potential competitors." They're saying, "This is going to bring more people in to be interested in talking about products and services." That's the way I look at it. It's the rising tide raises all boats. It's the sense of community in legal is actually extraordinary.
Yes.
I hear that all the time from people who have come from outside the industry, and then they come and they're like, "People really share this stuff." Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
agreed. Yeah, and that's the abundance mindset that I really think you need to adopt. Having a fixed
me too.
mindset about this is not a winning strategy. Well, we talked about TLTF and investors. ILTACON is you guys have a new investor kind of badge
We
type,
do. Yeah,
right?
this
Tell
is
tell us
new
about
this
that.
year.
Yeah, tell us
So
about it.
we have people, and there obviously there'll be people there who investors who don't want badges, but we
Mm,
have people who can sign up with an investor badge, in which case they will get a ribbon that
mm.
specifically says investor. So they want people to know that they're there in that role. And I think as this is our first year doing that, I think it will grow. I'll be happy to see some of those investor badges around. My guess is we won't see many of them Monday. There's the exhibit hall opens Monday night. We'll see them on a lot of them on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Interesting. And how is ILTACON catering to investors differently than TLTF?
Oh, wow. What a great question. For TLTF, they are critical stakeholders, key stakeholders, central to the whole model of that event. For us, we're learning. We're trying to figure out where they fit. I've had a lot of really great conversations with an industry veteran named Mike Bryant. Many of you may know Mike. He and I first met years ago when he was with Donnelly Business Services, I think was the name of the company then. And my old law firm, Sidley, was an early outsourcer of a number of office services functions. And that's how I first met Mike. And he now is a principal with Knox Capital. And by the way, I think you can probably find it on YouTube somewhere. He does this 7-minute TED Talk on the different kinds of venture capital and private equity that is fantastic. I bet it's out there somewhere. I've heard him do it live, and it's absolutely great. But he's been teaching me about the different needs of the different kinds of investors. So we're very, I would say, immature at this point in our understanding of what they need. Zach and his team are very mature in understanding what they need, and we'll get better. And Zach will answer a lot of questions for me. But what we have is a nexus of companies in this space all in one place at one time.
So the year that we did Startup Hub, there was a place where you went and pitched. It was like on the last day, and it was the Paul Dominic from Baker McKenzie kind of hosted it. Yeah. But I thought that was a lot of fun, and it wasn't widely attended. I think because it was the last day, and a lot of people. It was hard to find, but I thought that was really interesting, and the people that were there were super engaged. So, are we doing that?
About that? Yes, we're thinking about doing that again. I think that we're trying to find the right formula. One of the things we've also been talking about is having a series of sessions, like on the regular education grid, or along the adjacent to the regular education grid. That would be like pitch session 1, pitch session 2, pitch session 3. Each one would have 5 or 6 pitches, and just put it on the schedule. Let the pitches be longer. I don't know. We'll see. We're still talking about it. Actually, I went to Legal Geek in Chicago several weeks ago now, and they do a good job of that on the main stage, but the pitches are really short. Right. I mean, really, really short. I'm not saying that's bad. And you move through them. People have to get their message out quickly. And if they can't articulate their message in 5 minutes, maybe they need a different message, or they need to revisit it. But I thought that was an interesting way to approach it. So I'll take that back to my committee, and we'll see. We're going to try to get better for sure every year.
Yeah. I mean, it might also be interesting to open that up to non-startups, to established companies. I mean, I feel like everyone needs to have their pitch nailed down regardless of what stage you're at. So that might be interesting too, just to have vendor pitches in general.
Which Legal Geek does, actually.
Yes.
And I thought that was interesting. And when you see me looking down, I'm not being rude. I'm writing notes on the things that you're suggesting to me.
I am too. I'm making notes too.
So I want to bring it back to my favorite topic, AI.
Yeah.
How much of the content at this year's ILTACON is going to be AI focused, and how much is it going to differ from the Evolve event that you held earlier this year?
That's a great question. So let me answer it first by saying I would certainly at least a third has a significant AI component, even when it's like using an AI chatbot to improve help desk operations kind of topic. You know what I'm saying? Let me say, before how I say it differs from Evolve, let me say how it differs from last year's ILTACON. Because keep in mind, at last year's ILTACON, ChatGPT was what,
Mm-hmm.
8 months old,
Mm-hmm.
there were still a lot of if conversations. Is this, should we, and now they're how conversations.
Right.
And the programming is really different. There was also a lot of programming at ILTACON last year on helping people get vocabulary about AI.
Mm-hmm.
They were learning about things like temperature,
Right.
and they weren't terms that they were using normally. I think the big difference for Evolve is Evolve had two tracks, a security track and an AI track. And the AI track, for one thing, it had a lot of kind of uh, focus on what people had been doing over the last year, as well as what was possible to be done. But it was a single track. So it was designed for kind of a broad audience interested in AI. We have so many different audiences at ILTACON. There's much more of AI for a trainer, like how are trainers training that, how
Mm-hmm.
you would use it in a help desk. What do your data scientists, like there's a session, I think it's called transfer or data reimagined. So talking about how with AI tools becoming more prevalent, your data team has to reimagine or rethink how data moves around and how data hygiene is done and all those kinds of things. So I think that, Amy, to me is a big difference. It's AI in context of
Mm-hmm.
other roles.
Right. I mean, there's so many different angles to address AI from.
Correct.
So one of the closed door sessions that ILTA hosts is the G100, and I imagine that you're going to be touching on AI and leading AI in organizations. I'm
You
curious
know,
about the topic.
interestingly, they have much less emphasis on that than their G200 counterparts.
Interesting.
But the topic they're taking, I won't say less interest, that's not the right way to look at it. They had a particular thing they want to talk about as a group,
Hmm.
which they're calling AI without understanding.
Hmm.
That is part of the context of it. And to me, I can always take it back to when Brad Smith was on 60 Minutes last spring. I'm saying that's when it started, because then the lawyers started coming and say, Brad Smith was on 60 Minutes talking about AI. I ought to be, I ought to know about it. So the lawyers are cautiously jumping on the bandwagon without really knowing a lot about the tech.
Right.
And so part of it is this idea of how you have these conversations with people.
Hmm.
One CIO told me, and it was so funny when we were doing a roundtable around this, is people are coming to me and saying, "Oh, I have this problem in my business that I think can be solved with AI," and the CIO would say, "We've actually been able to solve that for about 3 years in a different way, but you didn't know." So there's this incredible surge of interest in applying tech to the business. So the
Hmm.
angle for the G100 is much more about those conversations.
Hmm.
Um, for the G200, they're doing almost all AI all day, and it's more of a journey. So there's a session on picking your projects. Like, how do you pick your projects? Do you look at your data? Do you look at your practice? Do you look at your budget? I mean, where do you start? Then does it have to be generative AI? Maybe a predictive AI tool is fine. And
Right.
what's the difference and how do you have that conversation? We're having an AI showcase. We have 3 firms that have made in that strata, in that G200 strata, who have made significant investment.
Hmm.
And there's one firm with CoCounsel, one firm with Harvey, and one firm with Henchman. Um,
Okay.
and they're talking through what problem were they trying to solve? Why did they decide on the platform that they did? What do they wish they had known going into that they know now? How did
Yeah.
they measure success? So these showcases. So there's a lot, definitely a lot there. The one other place I think AI will come up a lot in the G100 conversation, they're talking about third-party risk.
Hmm.
And the analogy we've been using is, when you get married, you don't just marry your spouse, you marry their family. You get the crazy uncle and the cat lady grandma and the fun niece, and you get all that. But it's the same thing when you make certain types of business arrangements, you marry the family. It's not just that provider, it's their supply chain. And what does that mean for security and securing risk? And of course, AI is a very important tools for both the bad guys and for the people who are securing against the bad guys. So certainly AI is going to be a big part of that conversation.
For sure. I don't envy CISOs right
Oh
now.
my gosh, they have the worst job ever. And since I think you were both, I know, Ted, you were at Evolve. Our keynote one day was a guy named Joe Sullivan, who had been the CISO at Facebook and then at Uber, like two most thankless jobs on the history of the planet. And he said he was so used to walking down the hall at Facebook, and when people would see him, they'd go hide because they figure if the CISO's coming to see them, it's never good news, right? That there's been a breach, or that the thing that they really want to do, their pet project, didn't pass security review. I mean, something. Never anything good. No one wants to eat lunch with the CISO. Apparently, that's one of the things I learned from that talk.
That's sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true with kind of network admins in general. It's never, they're always locking you down, and people. I remember back in the day, people were always trying to get administrative privileges to their laptops, and you getting a big no, and people don't like to hear that. Well, any questions out there? Please post them in the chat, and we're happy to answer as we have the conversation. I think you were going to ask about something about sessions, Amy, before I cut you off there. I just want questions to pop up as we're chatting.
Yes, not that I want Joy to play favorites here, but are there any sessions that you're in particular looking forward to?
Well, there are a couple of sessions about chatbots in application. And AI-driven chatbots particularly. I am always intensely interested in how this stuff looks in the real world.
Right.
So I am looking forward to some of those sessions that say, we tried this and this is what we learned and this is what we found. I mean, the theory is super important too, but I think the practical part is absolutely fantastic. So there are a couple there. I mentioned this one about data reimagined. There are several sessions around this idea of rethinking your data strategy that are very important. So when we first started going to cloud, one of my consultant friends schooled me on one of the things she had learned by doing cloud projects. She's like, the first half dozen cloud projects she did, the people's Active Directory was in terrible condition. I mean, literally terrible. And so they ended up having to stop their plans, do a remediation of the firm's AD environment, and then go on, such that she started building that into every project proposal and every project plan she did. It's going to be exactly the same, in my view, with data and AI. So as you are looking at your sessions, there are several in the sense of what do you need to think about before? You've made the decision that you're going to go down the path, some AI path, but what do you need to do in order to be successful? And I would look for those if you're really thinking about going down that way. Of course, I also just love, I've been doing contracts my whole career. There's one just on writing a good IT contract. It's so practical. And if I were still in my old law firm job, I'd have totally gone to that, even though I easily did 10,000 contracts in my life. You can always do better.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'll echo you. I mean, we have these conversations with our clients here at InfoDash all the time of, there's amazing AI capabilities out there, and not just Gen AI, like all kinds of AI, but you have to get your data in order to be able to fully unlock their potential within your organization. So I agree.
I would also encourage people to go to the keynotes. I mean, again, both of you have been at ILTACON. You know that the keynotes get talked about all week.
Yep.
So we do not have a keynote on Tuesday, but on Monday we have Hannah Fry, who's brilliant, and she's a mathematician. And she's a TV celebrity in the UK, actually. She's a very interesting person. She's written a book about how a mathematician proves the existence of Santa Claus. So I automatically like her because I think that's fantastic. Then on Wednesday, we have Jeff McKissick, who's a terrific security expert
Mm.
and is very practical in his approach to security. And then on Thursday, we always have the G100 and G200 wrap up. So we have CIOs from those groups that are just talking to the audience about the issues that are important to those firms and the kinds of things that were discussed in the 100 and 200 sessions, and people always love it. So I would also don't sleep in and miss the keynotes. You'll be really sorry you did.
The G100 and 200 wrap-ups are always one of my favorite things about ILTACON. Even before I made the jump from the law firm side to the vendor side, it's just really useful. A lot of times validating information about things that I thought were going on in the landscape and things that others were addressing. So super helpful. And now that I'm on the business professional side, I'm looking forward to it for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Yeah, you hear the perspectives, what kinds of things people are worried about, what they're going to be looking for. And I always say that when ILTONs get together, there's a big part of learning. There's also a significant portion of group therapy. A commiseration.
Yes. Yes.
So true. Yeah. So Amy and I are speaking as well. I'm going to be talking about intranets. Imagine that.
I'm so surprised by that.
I know, law firm intranets. It's been my life for 16 years. And then Amy, what is your session on?
So my session is called How to Grow an Innovator, and we're going to be talking about how to grow innovators within your organizations. And we're speaking to sort of everyone along different phases in that journey. So individual contributors who are kind of starting out in this innovation path and legal, all the way to folks who are leading innovation within their organizations, and the things to keep in mind as they're nurturing and fostering innovation. So it should be good.
Yeah, those are, I mean, to your point, Joy, practical sessions. Ours, we're going to actually do 2 case studies. So we're bringing one of InfoDash's clients on stage, and KLST, they build intranets kind of custom. They're bringing a client on stage. We're going to show screenshots and maybe even some real life stuff. And I think that's what ILTACON is all about, is showing real life, trading war stories and learning from each other.
Totally. I mean, Ted, I know you've heard me use this phrase before. I always call it war stories instead of press clippings. When you want the real story, it makes a difference. And that's where the in-person networking too, when you can call somebody and get their straight story about something when you really need it. And that happens with trust. And trust, I mean, can be built virtually. We know this. We do it with our teams all the time. But the in-person is really hard to replace.
Yeah, and I think legal is somewhat unique in just how reliant they are, the industry, legal tech specifically, on that information sharing. So, for example, like I just had a meeting this morning with our CMO, and we were looking at website traffic, and what law firm folks don't do typically, at least in KM, is go do a Google search as a first step. They'll go to the ILTA forums and post, hey, what are you guys doing about such and such? Or their own, they call that kind of dark social. And like public facing websites, that's kind of a secondary, that's how you get validated. But that's typically not how you're found. You're found through these networks and these dark social mechanisms. And ILTA is just a great example of that.
Well, and I think we've built a good reputation for trustworthiness over the years. I mean, we have a very specific approach to content. I mean, we had over 900 session ideas for 82 slots.
Wow.
I have teams of volunteers, like 45, who go through those and figure out what to do. Then for the 82 sessions, we had 899 speaker applications.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then what about attendance? You guys broke attendance records this year,
Well,
registration records,
I'm
right?
telling you, we're 20% ahead of where we were in 2019 at the same time, at least as of Monday of this week. I haven't gotten my report yet today because today is the day the housing block was supposed to close, and um, uh, my team has been flooded with registrations today. So we were
Uh,
well over 15, and the number I look at is full week member reg. I mean, we also have affiliates and day passes and invest, but that's to me the number that year to year, year over year is the number I look at. We were well over 1,500 on Monday
Oh,
for
wow.
full week member reg.
wow.
So that doesn't count day passes, full week member registration.
Yeah. I think I asked the question on this week's BPC call about just overall numbers, and it's just like 3,300.
Yep.
Which is massive. Yeah, and somebody just chimed in that the hotel is sold out Sunday through Thursday as of this morning. And I think, Joy, are you guys working on?
We are. So we are, we had been talking to a couple of hotels about overflow blocks. So there should be information on that later today. And actually, for people who are registering today, we've now modified our response email saying, hold on, we're going to have a link for you to register. We're also just working with the hotel, with the Gaylord, through what my team calls the jigsaw puzzle, because this person is staying Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but this person wants Saturday through Tuesday, and this person wants Wednesday and Thursday, to see where the gaps are and what we can do. So I have a wonderful person on my staff whom I call the hotel whisperer. She is great at working through these things, and we will have something for you later today. Hold on, folks. We had a much bigger rush of registrations today than we expected. So
Oh. Well, overall, that's a good thing.
it is a great thing.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing some LinkedIn lives and some podcasts. We're bringing a videographer in the booth, and we'd love to get with you on Wednesday and hear kind of how things are going, because there's so many people that can't go to ILTACON, right? I think that in the number 90% of ILTA members
That's
will
right.
never go.
That's right. And it's important to me that we bring value to our whole community year round. And so the more we can share, the better. And I think that's great, because the thing is, if you share the content, it dilutes the value of ILTACON. No, it doesn't.
No.
If anything, it enhances it. And for those that get to go and have the in-person experience, it's fantastic. I mean, my first ILTACON, it was called LawNet then, was in 1995. I was hooked. I was hooked on the organization. But there are people who just realistically are never, ever going to get here. And we need to also provide service to them. And again, it's rising tide raises all boats. It makes the community better. That's the way I view it.
Absolutely. More abundance mindset.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time. I really look forward to doing this again, maybe in person at ILTACON.
You betcha.
I think we'll have a lot of fun with that. And I guess we are exactly 1 month away. So August 11th, today's July 11th. We got 31 days until showtime. So good stuff. Thank you for joining, and we'll see everybody in exactly a month.
Ted, Amy, thank you so much for having me today. It's always a pleasure. Thanks to everybody who participated. And I hope I get to see you in person in a month. I'll be the person with crazy red curls that are running from place to place every minute of every day.
Absolutely. All right. Good stuff. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.